Okay, good evening, colleagues. Welcome to the 29th edition of the Tourism Online Forum series in January 2024. We are very delighted to have you joining us for this enlightening event, which is proudly hosted by the Center for Advanced Tourism Research, CATS, at the Hokkaido University. And this is your host, Mo. For tonight's session, it is indeed an honor to be part of this gathering in the spirit of New Year season. Today's our lecture have the discussion about the community and the protected areas, and it's a case study of Hainan Tropical Rainforest National Park. And today we are very honored to have Dr. Yana Wengel to share her recent research. So Yana Sensei is an associate professor at Hainan University, Arizona State University Joint International Tourism College in China. And she takes a human geography lens on social sustainability, international development, and tourism. And her interests include volunteer tourism and tourism in developing economies, nature-based tourism, and mountain training. Her current projects are focused on nature-based tourism, visitors' experiences in protected areas, and leisure experiences of patterns with an eating disorder. Yana is interested in creative methodologies for data collection and stakeholder engagement. And she is also a co-founder of the Lego series play research community. So please notice that this online lecture will be recorded and uploaded to our center's YouTube channel. So let's invite Professor Yana to share her lecture. And please leave your comment and question below in the Q&A box. So Yana, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mo Sensei, for the invitation. I'm really delighted to share some of my working insights from Hainan. For instance, before working there, I knew very little about the island myself, and it's not surprisingly that people around the world usually don't even know that China has a tropical island, which is strangely branded by some people as Hawaii of the Orient because the latitude between Hainan and Hawaii is the same. But this place also has another similarity in terms of it's a volcanic island, like what you can see on the picture is a tropical rainforest jungle, one of the best preserved and very unique places in China. China is large, has very different landscapes, but let's have a look into the national park system. So it's common knowledge that worldwide biodiversity loss is happening, that different countries address it in a different way. In China, people not only use that UN Sustainable Development Goals, but they have their own thing, which is called Chinese ecological civilization concept, where the government is trying to live in equilibrium with nature and stop having that egalitarian approach to nature, but rather trying to create a balance. And one of these huge measures to restore that balance between people and nature is a new national park system, which should be rolled out until 2035. China has many protected areas. However, the management of these areas is fragmented due to different legislation in different provinces and counties, and different stakeholders are in charge of conservation and development in those protected areas. So to make a unified system, all these new national parks will comply with the International Nature Conservation Union, IUCN. And in the beginning, first 5 national parks were rolled out. So I always forget the number 5, but it's basically Hainan, and we have a very unique gibbon. I'll talk a little bit more about that. Then there was panda, the yellow river, the tiger, and I think another national park was related to some pristine bird. I think now around 10 national parks are announced. What does it mean, like announced or enrolled? So basically, the government said, well, this is all will be national park, and quite often it is existing area. So in the case of Hainan, you can see on that slide that the map, it's approximately 1/7 of the island. And this mapped area now unites many protected areas which already existed before, but now it will be more strict and the main focus will be on the conservation. So Hainan Tropical Rainforest National Park is mainly comprised from jungle. There are 9 cities and counties in this area, so not everyone will be moved out of the national park. There are several flagship species, including elk deer, Hainan gibbon, Hainan peacock peasant. However, I probably, I don't know, every 2-3 months I receive an email through Google Scholar alerts that some kind of new mushroom was found or some kind of new insect was found in Hainan, because jungle is dense and not everywhere there are many people, so scholars are still, like the biologists, they're still in this area. One of the interesting fact that the national park is home not only to pristine biodiversity, but it's also home to Li ethnic group. Of course, Hainan has mostly is populated by Li, Miao, and Chinese from the mainland, so different other Chinese, including Han, of course. But Li and Miao nationalities used to live sort of in the center of the island. That's why it's not only it has not only the biodiversity value, but it has also this intrinsic heritage, cultural heritage in the area. Oops, I was a little bit too fast. I just briefly want to mention like those key areas. So Bauernling is the area where the gibbons live, and again a few words later about the gibbons, because these Hainan gibbons, they are very unique. There are about 36 or 37 gibbons left, compared to about 2,000 gibbons in 1960s. And many people don't know, but Hainan yellow crescent gibbon is possibly the most endangered gibbon, the most endangered primate, and probably the most endangered mammal. So this area is quite rural, and a lot of the area of the national park is dedicated to the co-conservation area, so to the gibbon's habitat. Wujishan is one of the, let's say, urban locations in the national park, because the city itself is quite large. There is a lot of Li people there. There are many different shops, many restaurants, so there are many cultural points, some of the festivals, and so on. Yigeling is one of the not very famous areas, I guess, or not so famous compared to others in the national park, and it is has that forest area as well as the river, like river type landscape. Then we have Janfenling. That's where the case study is taking place in this section of the national park. And this part is interesting because it has one of the easier to access mountains. As you can see on the picture on the left, there are stairs, like stairway made up to the top, and people used to go there. And during our research, which I just posted a link here for someone who is interested in like TikTok studies, usually around 50 people would come in a 1 or 2 weeks time. But then suddenly in 2020, someone uploaded a video of the Sea of the Clouds. So due to some air mass formation, there were beautiful clouds. This video was posted, and around 500 people started to come per day. But the area was not ready to have that much tourists. So that had significant implication on trafficking, congestion, rubbish, noise pollution. Local people didn't know what to do with so many tourists. The roads are narrow in the mountain areas. So all this kind of implication that people suddenly understood, well, actually a lot of tourism is also not so good. Although tourism is usually like prophesied as a tool to alleviate poverty, as something good, but actually you need to know how to do tourism in order for tourism to be good. And then Daitian is one of the other sections. It's kind of plain and sort of flat area, and this is the area where this eld deer reside, or the habitat. So I already mentioned briefly about the Hainan gibbon. So currently there are a lot of efforts to promote that gibbon exists, because believe me or not, in 2019, when I was asking people in Hainan about the gibbons, very few people know about them. And they told me, no, go to Sanya. There is a monkey island there, which is a very popular tourist attraction. So there's island with a lot of little monkeys. I was like, no, there are also gibbons. So it was really not a very well-known fact that they exist. And then with establishment of the national park, with some of the publicity by the national park authorities, by government, there are also different video series, including in English, for example, on YouTube about the national park, mentioning that. And common threats led to population decline, like hunting, habitat reduction. There was a hurricane in 2014, and that's why you can see those in the top left picture. You can see the line. So the scientist actually just put a rope. Well, so it's not just a rope, it's a complicated rope between the trees to allow gibbons to move from one part to another in a more safe way. And this has happened due to the destruction of the habitat by the typhoon or hurricane in 2014. So it took gibbons about 6 months to learn. So the interesting fact also about that area, that people living in the national park, not many of them know about gibbons somehow. And we met also some of them who have who remember that the gibbons were hunted in the past, and now they know that now is not allowed. But it feels like that locals do not have this understanding of their unique situation, because I was telling to people, but this is like panda. It is, in a way, it sounds sarcastic, but it's better than panda because there are so few of them left. And in world primatology studies, that's actually now, it's like a game. Will they survive, or will they be one of the species which will be gone? So because also due to small gen pool, scientists don't know how this population, like from 36, how healthy the breed will be. So very many facets in this national park. And I think this is probably typical, no matter about what national park or protected area we talk, there will be some multiple layers of culture, nature, local population, international and national scientists, and so on. So let me introduce like the area of the study. So Jenfinling main peak can be seen on this picture, and this is the area about like the green area. So it is the closest area as well to the habitat of the gibbons. There are some hopes that gibbons might reside in some other parks of the national park. However, recent studies did not found any signs. So when this national park was announced, it was just communicated in the news, oh, well, okay, now this large area in the park will be a national park. And we were already collecting data for visitor experience survey for about a year. So we have visited several parts of the national park on multiple occasions. And then we see, oh, look, like there is a new map installing, or oh, look, they put a new information center. But when we were talking to people about the national park, they were not informed, neither locals and not even some of the staff. So some of the rangers didn't really know that it was happening at the time. So I guess this is due to different management strategies and what kind of things have to implement it first. But it is sort of strange that, for example, the department in charge of signposting in the national park did not communicate to some of the rangers who stayed at the gate of the park. So in Jenfinling, to enter the park, there is a gate where you need to pay a ticket, and people there couldn't give us more information. So then we went to the area, we went to the locals, and we started talking to them about the national park. Overall, we have done, I think, about 20 interviews with the staff living in the Janfenlink and also working in this area. And we have conducted the workshops with local business stakeholders. They were involved in restaurant, tourism, and farming business. So that's just some of the pictures. The area is very simple. The housing is not, posh. The people are, for sure, there are also rich people like in every place, but on average, it's a rather impoverished area. So we wanted to look how the national park creation will influence the population and what are their thoughts towards the national park. And of course, we know that national parks work better, or protected areas work better when it's participative community approach. However, considering Chinese top-down government structure, it's also interesting how they will sort of negotiate challenges and also like the good stuff, the stuff which can be beneficial from the workshop. And let me just take a moment here to introduce Ketso to you. So many people don't know about that, and I'm happy to answer all of the questions at the end, or you can email me if you want to know, because it's a really, really good tool to talk to people, not in a sort of forced way. Because even doing the interviews in China, in our experience, is that for people it's difficult to say something sometimes, because people in the area believe that their information may be not useful, and they were really surprised that we wanted to talk to them. So Ketso is a toolkit. It's a participative creative methodology. The kit has a felt mat and various type of plastic cards. And you can have a structured workshop where a facilitator is asking questions. People have time to think about it, to write it down. It can be used by illiterate people as well, because you can just draw some kind of symbol and then later explain. It is better than a focus group because it takes some kind of power dynamic between talkative people, or like between someone senior and junior. So, and in our experience in this national park, it worked really great. So this is how it looks when the participants write their answers. So they place their cards. The cards can be moved and removed, and there is no analysis sort of needed in terms of, like, we usually apply Ketso with thematic analysis, but you can actually cluster your issues, your challenges, your opportunities, whatever you discuss about, you can actually cluster it during the workshop. And this is sort of the beauty of this method. So overall, we came up with 4 themes. So it was about the ecological conservation. Since the rules are getting tighter, people already got prohibited several activities, like, for example, cutting the trees at a time. And people were also worried about their social welfare. For example, if they cannot farm in the forest, or they will have to be moved to some other area of residence, how this will be decided, which is very strictly connected to the policy. At the time, it did not exist, and all those compensation mechanisms had to be renegotiated between government and the residents. And it was also about heritage, because one of the themes we talked about was the tombs of the ancestors inside of the national park. So people were worried that, first of all, they will be not allowed to burn fire and use firecrackers, which is part of the culture, and also that they maybe will have to be removed. So they were concerned with these kind of things, and they were thinking how this will be organized. Then some of the participants also talked about tourism development, and surprisingly, there is one study actually dated back exactly 20 years, where someone came to, Jeff Wall was one of the authors, when people came to the area and talked to participants, or talked to residents about their attitudes towards ecotourism at the time. And people said, well, we don't really know what it is, but we are hopeful, like we think it's a good thing. We think we can earn money. But to date, actually not many things have happened, because also with this new national park system, several accommodations were closed or destroyed, especially those which are inside of the national park. So in Janfenlink, there is now only one hotel operating inside national park, and we do not know why this hotel is still allowed to be. So we heard a rumor that hotel belongs to someone who is retired from the military. So whether it's true or not, so there is definitely some kind of power structure beyond our understanding. So that hotel is working, but the conditions of that hotel are very poor. So and then we were also thinking how, like what kind of policies we need, how can we help, and what kind of things we need to do, because even if we come to the area, especially me as an outsider in China, so which could be considered how to make us heard, sort of. And then we talked and talked to the locals, and finally, let me just, oh, that's some other images from the area. Let me just mention one of the reasons of this conflict as well is that in 1990s, logging was banned and people were allowed to develop different businesses, including, for example, binlan growing, so the betel nut, and oranges, and there are some stock animals like chickens living within what will be considered the co-conservation area. So people were already laid off once, and then some of the people were invited to work for the national park when that area was designated as protected area. So now national park is established, and some people are again losing income, and some people will have to move. And the historical context is making the situation even a little bit more difficult for locals to understand, but why the national park is a good thing now, because we used to live off the forest resources, but what is now? So we came up with some of the suggestions. So one of the things we recommend is establishing a platform like a think tank exchange, which can serve as a coordination mechanism between national park authorities and the residents. That could be some kind of space where the concerns can be brought forward or even explained, because also education levels in the area like usually around middle school, so not everyone is able to go to vocational training or get some kind of higher education. So and other things we were thinking that like some of the suggestions, because locals are generally open to new opportunities and they are eager to make money, but I think they don't know how. So we believe that promoting capacity building in conjunction with sustainable tourism, which could be developed, could be one of the things. But definitely education needs to be enhanced, and there should be some kind of talent pool for locals. I'll give you the simple math example. So the salary in the area is around 300 to 500 US dollars. And usually only one family member is working like for cash. So some other people may have like works just on the local farm and not really get like cash. And for Chinese students to pay to live at the dormitory at the university, they require about 300 US dollars for food, because dormitories are usually of like 4 to 6 people in one room. There are very many students on campus and there are no cooking facilities, which is totally like for us in Europe is very hard to understand, because dormitories are different to students' flat. But people from this kind of area cannot send a child to university or any other vocational training because they don't have 300 US dollars to subsidize just the eating part. You know, the rent for the dormitory is fairly cheap. So we believe that in terms of capacity development, there could be some initiatives which will teach locals how to create sustainable tourism businesses, because you can create all sorts of bed and breakfast. You can let people participate in organic farming, because not only Binlan is growing there, so there are different things. One of the conservation initiatives, Kaduri Farm from Hong Kong, has tried to diversify income by harvesting honey. There are two different bee types in the forest, but the honey doesn't really look appealing at the moment, so the people just put it in the empty bottles from sort of spirits alcohol, and it's like glass bottle with a used etiquette of some kind of baijiu, and that stands next to parking lot where someone is looking after them and people can buy it. But whole honey making industry can be develop more, because there are different byproducts of honey. There are honey festivals. I mean, it could be great for kids to learn about how bees are getting less and less around the world and how important they are. So another thing which can be done is photography. Photography is a big thing in China. People travel around the world and, for example, they dress in a national costume of the area they visit. It's very popular in places like Yunnan, Tibet, other places in China as well. So I've seen in Beijing myself, people working in a sort of old emperor dress and taking pretty pictures. So locals can be trained also to be photographers and bird watcher guides, and like all sorts of guiding industry around the related to tourism. And again, I think with the more establishment of the national park, people will have more opportunities, hopefully, to work there, like, for example, in information centers, or again, as a guides. So yeah, there are different types of things which can be done, but they need some mechanism and some kind of courses. And many of us, especially who live in the cities, we know, you just go online, go to, I don't know, some kind of Coursera or Education X, enroll in online class and learn how to use Photoshop or something like that. But these kind of things are not possible in that area. So it would be really great if there would be a mechanism like for that. And of course, last but not least, which I think cannot be influenced at all, like sort of from our side, is that legislation should be improved in terms of compensation, who gets what, under what conditions. If your area is in a co-conservation area, then where do you move? Because there are no plots, and how do you move? So, but I also believe that those kind of things, if they are explained, the population will not be against that much. Because when we were talking just about the gibbons with locals, and we were saying and comparing it to panda, they were like, oh, true, like it's here in our forest. And they said, yes, and you can make souvenirs, or you can, sell postcards, or like whatever, like there are, again, but how to get those ideas to the people. So that's why this kind of think tank platform could be useful. And also it's especially useful because China aims to create world largest national park system. And I think the problems people have in Hainan will be quite similar to the problems people have like in other parts and in other national parks, because quite often national parks are remote, and in remote areas there is not enough job, or the pay is not good, and the young population is migrating to the larger areas, to the cities. But actually we see that at least in case of Jianfenling, local people want to stay at home because they love their area. They are connected in some special way to their area, and they actually don't want to move. But they say, but what do I do? How do I feed my family? So yeah, that's just some of the insights from my side about the national park, and about what kind of things we saw happening there. So I'm very welcoming any questions, discussions. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Yana Sensei, for this wonderful lecture. I think it's the first time we invite people to talk about national park management, and especially nobody ever make any presentation related to China. I'm pretty sure we have audience from all over the place. Now we are welcome for question and comments. If you have any question and comments, you can either raise up your hand or leave your comments at the Q&A box. Let's give people some time. Okay, before normally we will wait a little bit when people start to typing. Before that, I will curious about some questions about one kind of finding from your presentation. You mentioned about the farmer actually move away from this area because the new policy. But historically speaking, when we also talk about the heritage part, agriculture should be very important asset for this area, right? So what could
I,
you
th I think
mm,
I think in terms of agriculture, there is a lot of coconut and binlang in the
uh,
area, which are the
mm,
crash crops, and to move those will be more difficult. But
mm,
in the inside the co-conservation area, there are small farms. So we saw
mm,
farms like orchard gardens with oranges, and we
mm,
saw something like chicken farms. I think those kind of places could be easy, like moved more easily if the compensation is appropriate. Of course, it's very sad for people to lose what they've grown, especially they were invited in 1990s to grow those, like they were allowed to
ah,
grow that. But you can also see on the picture at the top left, like all of those used to be hotels. So now
okay.
I'm not sure on the picture which one, but now only one is open because the
Mm,
lake quality got really bad. And if you can see in the top corner, like I don't know, like here, this is like this kind of farm, small farm
okay. Yeah.
near the, and this is a fish pond here, so
Mm,
people grow also fish there for the area. I think um, some of the things will be easier to achieve, and like I said, there are 9 cities around this area, so it's not just forest without nothing. So people already live there, so some things will not be moved. The question is, where do you move? And
mm,
in, I think in Baoting area, a village was created for people with a better housing, like quality of housing, with a infrastructure. And about, I heard about 900 people were moved, but they agreed to move because their conditions became better and because some of the employment opportunities were created at that site. So the question is why it's not happening in Zhangfenling. We don't
mm.
know, and I don't think we will find out. So, but it's also not what we are trying, like it's not what we are trying to achieve, because those kind of larger things will happen on very high governmental level and decided and done top down. So
Mm.
we are trying to understand how we can help in terms of population. So what are their needs? And they were really surprised. They said things like, "Why do you want to talk to us? No one has asked us." So we feel very sentimental about like the things what they have said, because they just want to stay there and have opportunity to work.
Okay, that's very interesting. Another thing curious me is about your methodology. One method, the Ketso.
Yeah.
Could you explain more about that? How do you apply it, and how easily local respondent can easily adapt that method?
So Ketso method is sort of structured. There
Mm,
are sets of questions. The
mm,
analogy goes from sort of, there is a tree in the middle and there are that kind of branches, which you can see like the longer parts. And then you can ask, it can be, I think the easiest example if we do like something like SWOT analysis. So if you can ask
okay.
people, what
Mm,
kind of things are working well? What is working well? Then people write down and then you can cluster them. And what are the challenges, like what kind of challenges are there, for example? And then the next step could be, what do you think you can do to minimize the challenges, like you as community or individual or organization? And then people can like write down again, and then towards the end of the workshop, some of the things or some of the actions can be prioritized. And I think one of the like things which came out in all 3 workshops is can be summarized as lack of capacity development, because not everyone has to go to formal education, to go to university, to go to vocational school, but there has to be something which, for example, teaches entrepreneurial skills, because there are no even taxi drivers there,
mm,
because everyone has a motorbike, and if you are tourists, it's hard to find. Of course, you can negotiate with some locals, but
mm-hmm.
if people how set up some kind of business, get some kind of skills. That's what we got like from all the workshops.
Okay, for a quick follow-up question. How many people usually is suitable for this kind of workshop?
Ketso has been done with like in our case there were four to six people,
Mm.
but also it can be done with like 300 people
Wow.
at a time.
Okay. Mm.
So
Oh, very cool.
the beauty of this method is that you only need to buy a kit um,
Mm.
from UK. It can be sent worldwide. It can be used like also with students, and you can run workshops. I think I have a large one, so 24. We
Okay.
have done it also at the conferences. I can tell you more. Like there is no training. You don't need to do like some kind of course. It's all
Mm.
open source.
Okay. Okay, wonderful. We have two questions so far. One is by Professor Joseph, and thank you, Yana Sensei. I arrived late, so I missed your introduction. I assume the key stakeholders in the national park are from minority ethnic community groups. If so, how does this impact altitudes toward tourism and the commodification of their cultural and natural inheritance? And how much agency do they actually have? It's a good question.
Um, I think in terms of the population, the mix is roughly like 40, 60% are from minorities. The
Oh.
minority is more than Miao. But
Mm.
at this area, like, and that's why I just put the picture, it looks like everywhere in a small place in China, in a rural place where the government is doing rural revitalization. So
Mm.
culture is not priority. It has not been commodified much. However, in Wujishan, for example, in other area, that's been promoted a lot more and a lot more intensive. I do have a feeling that in some parts of the national park, different things are promoted. So Junction Link is like for the mountain, for the nature, for the air, and I guess again, if locals were empowered to develop some forms of enterprises related to their culture, that could be successful because that exists in other parts. In terms of commodification, um, I don't think it's happening yet. I think it's more like in the beginning stage where, like, honestly, in 2019, there were hardly souvenirs with something from Hainan. I couldn't find anything. Like, there were some candies, but now you have some kind of shopping bags and like t-shirts, whatever. So people, younger people, I think that was also happening through COVID. People were at home for a very long time. And I think Chinese are great because they're very entrepreneurial. So many people thought of what kind of things to produce. So I do see like different souvenirs even, or not souvenirs, but just smaller enterprises.
Mm. Okay, thank you very much. We have another question from Philip. Thank you for the presentation. Could you explain the implication for life and livelihood of those people, especially after the creation of the national park? Does zoning into core, buffer, and periphery exist? And how does that affect people's life? Also, could you explain the role of elites in this place and the role of big tourism multinational companies as opposite to low budget tourism? In short, what is the nature of tourism here and the pressure on nature resources? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Philip. So I'll try to go one by one. So zoning exists in terms of co-conservation area where no one allowed, and then sort of the rest. And I think more zoning will happen or is happening. It is just not announced yet, so we do not have information about that because I guess it will be when it's released on some kind of committee or a meeting related to the national park, then the general public will be informed. But for sure, that should be like the management of the whole national park system should be same everywhere That's why with those trial national parks, they are trying to create sort of a framework which later can be rolled out and implemented in other places. That's why it is very important, like, for instance, for us to do something for the local people in terms of improving their life. So periphery, I guess you can call some parts of the periphery, especially where beanland and coconut is still growing and will grow. I do hope that these plantations will be later replaced, for example, with rice, if it's possible, because Hainan has very famous Shanlan rice. And Hainan was also the place where this special rice was bred by that very famous scholar. Mustn't say what was his name, Li Yaoping, right?
I'm not
The
familiar
father of
with.
the rice, the father of the rice.
Yuan Longping.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just pronounced it wrong. So there is like special rice. One of the types is Shanlan rice, rice which grows in the mountains and doesn't require so much water. And this area has like those hilly type of mountains. So I hope that gradually it will be possible, for example, to replace uh, at least some of the more harming crops, because beanland, for example, is sucking all the water and is destroying like the area around a lot more worse than maybe something else. Elites and multinational companies. So inside of the area, there are no multinational companies or hotels. Indeed, most of the accommodation is very primitive, and many local people who are well traveled, but also international people, will not go to such place because it's not that attractive, for example, about accommodation. So on that picture on the corner, you can see a house in the back a little bit. So that's typical residential small house. For example, accommodation can be available like on the first floor. There will be basic rooms with basic beds. So it's not quite there yet. That's why, again, I hope, or I think that this sort of capacity development on how to do things right from the beginning can be done. In some other parts of the national park, there are sort of fancier hotels, and there is definitely one resort, Yatai Resort in Wujishan area, with a price close to $100 per night or something like that. I have not been there, but I've seen pictures. So it looks like that multinational large hotel, but I think it's privately owned, and it's very popular among families of multi-generations because it's sort of more comfortable. They have swimming pool and kids playroom and so on. Pressure of natural resources is significant, I guess, because also after the COVID, these areas are getting more popular. Some people have heard that it is now a national park, so not a protected area, but like national park. And visitors who go there, they actually do enjoy that it is not popular yet. I have been in very famous Chinese protected areas, for example, in Yunnan. It's like people, loads of people put all in one bus on a particular route with particular stops. And so we do not have that yet. In a way, it would be good if it will remain sort of less visited, because the national park, although it has jungle, the visitors in our other study, they just say, but there is nothing to do here. There is nothing to see here. So why this place is important? And also some people perceive that the ticket price is expensive compared to nothing to see. But then you have people who love nature and have maybe like are connected to nature in a different way, and they say, we just love it here, it is very quiet, it's pristine, that's why we come here with my parents from Beijing. It's crowded, but we want to be in nature. So that's the place where you can still be in nature if you don't mind basic accommodation. But like what happened with this TikTok effect on one particular sport in this area, it's a nightmare. Like it was, I never seen such toilets there was rubbish everywhere because 500 people is a little bit too much. So I hope that with establishment of the and creation of the national park, carrying capacity will be counted and sort of people can book places maybe online. Like this is in Spain, in Italy, there are some national parks where certain areas have that many people per day. I think Mount Fuji probably has some cap per day as well. I'm not quite sure. But some of the places they have this cap and it should be totally introduced. And I see we have another question.
Yes, and from anonymous attendee, hello from Philippines. I want to ask, how does building a tourism infrastructure affect the life of people in the area, especially if there are ethnic group of people who live there?
Well, actually, people lost jobs. So, like again, all
Oh,
these red roofs, they were hotels, and they are now closed because they are in co-conservation area. There is one hotel, like I said, still operating. Probably will remain operating due to connection, if it's true, of that person to someone. So that one hotel is not closed because we were also wondering. So for now, in that area, there is no infrastructure for hotels. And I think, as far as I know, the creation of the legislation and other policies around the national park are not at the stage of incorporating tourism because the government strictly announced it is for conservation and other things are secondary to that because otherwise the IUCN designation will be stripped down and the system will be failed. But I think the sort of scale of planning and investment from the government will not allow that to happen, sort of. So I don't see any new tourism businesses emerged or emerging in the area. There are several hotels in other areas, like I said. Actually, one hotel is very famous, and it's like you kind of live among the locals. So there is one building next to other individual private houses. It's sort of large building, and that hotel is famous as a university hotel because many students will come and do the field trip there. So you can imagine, like conditions are also quite basic, and they are not probably even this small hotel. They have enough business from the university, and they're not really promoting themselves other than during the kapuk flower season. So when the trees are blooming, so we saw other tourists also coming to that particular place.
okay. Thank you very much. We are still welcoming more questions. We still have a little bit time, but before that, I think so far all the questions are from a production side and a management side. I would have added a question from the consumption side. Since Chinese tourists nowadays highly rely on the TikTok and other type of social media and this kind of promotion image of Hainan tourism. So I also noticed you have a one article related to TikTok and travel, right? So I would
Yeah.
like to hear more about this side, the consumption side, the story.
Um, so this national park or like the whole
Mm,
area was
mhm,
not really famous. And even when I said I want to go there, people ask me, why? There is nothing. Why do you want to go there? Like it's difficult to get there. There is no transportation. So for instance, if you come by train, it's hard to get taxi. You are transported by such a like kind of motorbike with a rickshaw type of thing on the side or
mm,
like some kind of mobile device. So, and then someone came to this place in the middle, or like that picture in the middle, and all this area in the morning was full of the clouds, and they have
mm,
uploaded this information. Like, do you see how many people, or like they were even on this photo? There are
mm.
I don't know, I can see like 50 people, something like that.
Okay.
So after this video, people saw it, and it was still during pandemic, sort of when China was kind of closed, so people could not go outside. And then literally 500 people came on a day. The people who sell food at the beginning of the track, they had to manage the traffic. They had to stop business, and they said they will share the profit somehow among each other. So that was that community collaborative work. They told us like that they were directing the traffic because also the roads are narrow and it's quite dangerous to drive if you have not been driving in mountain areas before. So there is definitely demand through videos like TikTok.
Mm.
We have also met some more like nature conscious influencers. For example, women, like three women with their children and nanny, they travel to the national park and they stream videos from there, how they cook, and they sell some products on
Mm.
internet related to cooking, I think. So they're probably just housewives who have a lot of time and have multiple children, and they had a very fancy camping equipment, so they were very nature conscious. They took all their rubbish with them. The kids were playing. So I think the general trend is changing towards not consuming nature, but being in the nature, just being
Mm.
there and seeing the greenery, the blue sky, and not just like, because people who want to consume things, they will go to Sanya, they will go
Mm.
to Hohai, they will go to Haiko maybe. So if it's related to some form of even visiting nature, like in Sanya, there is that glass bridge, or like Monkey Island. So there are other places in Hainan for consuming, but those
Mm.
places are for being, like at least how I feel. And I hope that because people comment to us, it's not special. We were just nearby and
Mm.
we came here. I hope that there will be more balance. Because if for average consumer there is nothing to see and nothing to do, there will be less harm for the national park.
Okay, what exactly the tourist profile in this region? Are there a lot of international tourists as well, or?
No, not at
Oh,
all.
okay. So managed
Even
for.
even before expats living in China, um, traveling to usually to the seaside because they
Mm.
come like for the sea vacation. The profile is families with children during the weekend on their around the island profile.
Mm-hmm.
Families with elderly as well around these three seasons when Chinese travel. So the May holiday, the October holiday, and the Chinese New Year. So February, January. And usually they are self-driving because it's sort of hard to get there. I
Mm.
guess eventually in some parts there will be like bus sort of connection, like from the national park, like in other places in China. Um, there are quite a few young people like traveling with friends or couples.
Mm.
Uh, and there are, let's say, people in their 40 plus who are very environment friendly and come to be in the nature, to have fresh air, to have like sort of positive nature effects, like to distress from the large city. So those people are coming on purpose, and sometimes they are involved in like bird watching, or they really go and like look at the plants. Maybe they're searching some plants, so or like they notice the wildlife. So naturalist maybe.
Okay, thank you. Joseph Sensei also sent two or three more questions. Do approaches to conservation differ here as compared to other countries and elsewhere in China? By that I mean, does development that expansion dominate discussions? Probably that's the first question.
Um, I think it will be very interesting to answer this question in like 2 to 3 years time when we know more, because like I said, these kind of things in China, they are announced and then you know about them, and before you don't know unless you work as a
Mm.
government representative on those kind of things. My feeling is that uh, for now priorities are uh, development of the national park, deciding on conservation zones, and dealing with the people who will lose money in terms of either moving out or not allowed to do their previous occupation in the national park. At the same time, there is a lot of digital promotion, at least about Hainan National Park, short videos on TikTok, WeChat channel. So National Park has their own WeChat channel, and then nature is promoted there. So for now, we don't know like what kind of path this national park system will take. But what I know is that the people in charge, they traveled to United States and to New Zealand to look at how the national park systems are constructed there, because in New Zealand there are, I think, only 13 protected areas, but large in scale. And China also aims to do sort of it large on the scale. And I think once it's decided, like that framework is sort of decided and tested in these first 5 or 10 national parks, then it will be implemented maybe in other places. But what I know is that there was a like National Park Zero, Potatso National Park in Yunnan. And it was the first national park according to IUCN regulations. And and they opened it, I think, in 2013, and they closed half of those paths which were available for people. In 2019, I think they got closed because probably it got impacted by nature so much that in coordination with IUCN, it was decided to close many parts of it. So now there is a very small, narrow path because they over-promoted this national park. This national park was featured in the movies. There were large event functions done at the backdrop of this forest and mountains. So now it's a fairly short path, paved path, which is open. No camping is allowed. So basically, they had to reset and let nature rejuvenate. But this information is also not quite 100% accurate, because no one will tell you that, oh yes, we have destroyed it by allowing too many people, because even one of the rangers told us, no, gibbons were never hunted. I mean, this is public information from publications, historical. China is not the only place where we hunt and kill wildlife. But the official line, what rangers telling you at the gate now, no, it was not hunted. So in this way, a lot of uncertainties, like from our side, like what kind of things we know and don't know.
Right. The last question is issues of carrying capacity and limits to acceptable changes part of the tourism development discussion.
So far, nothing exists as like I can say as a visitor, and we didn't see any evidence in terms of carrying capacity. I do hope that it will be the next step after those problems with the zoning and compensation for people, that they will say, okay, per day, that many people. Because for those who have traveled in other Chinese national parks, usually you pay your ticket, there is a public bus which drives usually now electric, so kind of environmental friendly, and people can be dropped off at particular spots. So it is not like Alaskan wilderness, or not like you are getting your backpack and you can wander through the Alps somewhere in a conservation zone. In China, it is more controlled, because some of the questions I was told that it is because there are many people. And they said, well, if we allow all the people to go, then all the people, today on TikTok, we have one location, tomorrow another one, and then crowds of people will come. And in a way, I am happy that, for example, in Janfen Link, the road is so dangerous that many people are not don't want to drive there, because so far this is what prevents people. Because even some of my students said, oh no, to this part we cannot go. I'm not good in driving, like we will not go. So in Hainan, I have not heard or evidenced anything about carrying capacity in terms of tourism in relation to the national park. But considering that the best practice examples will be taken from United States and New Zealand, I'm fairly convinced that it will be implemented. Maybe not now, because it's still just 2 to 3 years when it's officially new national park.
Okay, thank you. I think we are almost more than I expected. We have more than 35 minutes of Q&A. So I think we can stop here unless somebody else want to raise up your hand. Okay. Yeah, very insightful research and very good topic as well. I hope our student here and also the people come from an industry can also be benefited. And thank you again, Yana Sensei, and really looking forward to see you again. And wish you
Thank you
have
so much.
yeah, wish you have a great day from German, and yeah, we will have a good evening from Japan side. And thank you everyone for joining today's event, and see you next time. Okay.
Thank you.